Good morning. From Stephen's lips to God's ears. What do you think? What do you think? We're in a series in the book of Revelation, probably one of the most misunderstood books in the Bible. And I think a lot of us look at it almost like a map upside down. It's easy to think of this as about running away from our world. But I think it's actually something quite different. It's about seeing our world the way that God sees it. And that means it's not a book about when do I get to leave it, but how do I get to live in it. And so we're talking about the book of Revelation. And I think that for some of us, when it comes to things like this, it just seems terribly complicated and difficult. If you've ever in school or college tried to wrestle with something and it just didn't make any sense, and then all of a sudden it was like the light came on one day and you said, oh, I get it. That's what I'm hoping this experience will be for us today as we continue on in our series in the book of Revelation. We're in chapter 4, and this is how that chapter starts. Then as I looked, I saw a door standing open in heaven, and the same voice I heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this." And instantly I was in the Spirit, and I saw a throne in heaven and someone sitting on it. The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian. And the glow of an emerald circled his throne like a rainbow. I have a few points I want to just see if we can unpack together today. And the first is this, is that we look for doors out. God gives us a door in. We look for doors out. God gives us a door in. You know this, right? When life gets complicated, when your boss seems unreasonable, when your kids are making incredibly foolish choices, when your marriage feels more like a business arrangement than a love story, we start looking for an exit door. It's the most common thing people do. We want escape, we want relief, we want someone to change the channel for us. We just want a different story. And John is going through incredibly difficult things, and yet that's not what he got. He didn't get an exit strategy. He got an open door to heaven. God doesn't just offer escape routes, he offers access routes. And this winds up being a very important thing in our life. The door is not to get away from reality, but to see reality from a different perspective, from God's perspective. Which leads us to my second point this morning, and that is perspective is the most underrated form of power. Perspective is the most underrated form of power. John's world was in complete chaos. If you read through the letters earlier in the book of John that Jesus dictated to the church, there were not only problems without the church that were difficult in terms of persecution, but there also were problems within the church in terms of people straying away from faith and engaging in the kinds of things that would diminish their capacity to flourish as a follower of Jesus or in life. And then Rome is flexing its muscle. It's the world empire, and it's acting all of that. And John himself is in exile on Patmos, cut away and cut off from everyone and everything that he knows and loves. And so if you're keeping score, it looks like God is losing. Things are not going the way they're supposed to. But John is given a glimpse from the throne room in heaven. And what he sees is a throne, and the throne is not empty. It's not being contested for. There's not a fight going on who's going to sit on it. It's not fragile. It's occupied. It's stable. It's radiant. In fact, there's a great picture there. He says the glow from an emerald shines around like a rainbow, which is, of course, a nod to the story in Genesis about the flood that took out the whole world. And there's after Noah and his family move out into the world and begin to repopulate the world, God gives a promise, and they see it with a rainbow, which when you think about it, was a good time to make a promise, because what got them into the ark was all the rain. And if you see a rainbow, there's rain that's happening. And I'm sure Noah was having a little PTSD, and he looks up and God whispers to him, this rainbow is a promise. The way things were in the past are not how they're going to be in the future. Isn't that a great promise? Some of us could use that today. When we see things from God's perspective, it doesn't just change how we feel about something, it changes how we engage in those things. So in chapter 5, it goes on like this. Some very interesting imagery here. And remember, we talked about this last week. The imagery of Revelation is helped to shape our imagination. And so we're going to be exposed to a lot of images that are very helpful to us, even though it might not feel that way right now. It's not camouflage to keep us from seeing. It's a lens to help us understand. It's more like that. And so this is what he says. Then I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one who is sitting on the throne. There was writing on the inside and the outside of the scroll. And it was sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel who shouted with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals on the scroll and open it?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll and read it. Then I began to weep bitterly, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll and read it. But one of the 24 elders said to me, "Stop weeping. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the heir to David's throne, has won the victory. He is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Then I saw a lamb that looked as if it had been slaughtered, but it was now standing between the throne and the 4 living beings and among the 24 elders. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which represent the 7-fold Spirit of God that is sent out into every part of the earth. He stepped forward and took the scroll from the right hand of the one sitting on the throne. And when he took the scroll, the 4 living beings and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they held gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song with these words, "You are worthy to take the scroll and break its seals and open it. For you were slaughtered, and your blood has ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have caused them to become a kingdom of priests for our God, and they will reign on the earth." The scroll represents God's will, and Jesus is the only one who can open it. The scroll represents God's will, and Jesus is the only one who can open it. In ancient times, they didn't have books typically like we have them. Most books were actually written by hand, and they would write on what was like a sheet of paper to us, a sheet of papyrus. And it would typically be 2 columns. And then when that was full, they would write it on another sheet, but they would join those 2 sheets together. And when that was full, they would just keep doing that. And then how they would store that is they would roll it up, and that became the scroll. So the book of Revelation itself, if you were to take that style and unroll it, it would be about 15 feet long. John's gospel would have been about 25 feet long. So that's what a scroll is. But what's interesting is that we have to understand what the scroll represents in this book. And in Revelation, if you don't understand the scroll, you won't understand anything about it. This scroll is the centerpiece of the entire book of Revelation. And if we don't see it, we won't understand anything else. From chapter 5 all the way through to chapter 18, everything about those chapters is about the scroll, the seals being broken, and about the scroll being opened. And even after that, the last 4 chapters are about the after effects and realities that happen as a result of the scroll. So it's very important that we get some kind of handle and understanding about what this scroll is and what it represents. Now, in the ancient world and in Rome, if you saw a scroll like this, you would have had an assumption. And the assumption is this represents the will of someone who's passed away. Represents the will. Now, if you've ever made a will, if you've ever heard a will being read, if your attorney has ever recommended that you make a will, like all of it, we understand. And it means that there are things that were your property, they were your possessions, they were your resources, they were your assets, and you are making a decision as to how that is going to be distributed. And so what is it? It's this person's will for all of that stuff. This is what I will to be done with my stuff. That's where the idea comes from. Does that make sense? So the scroll represents the will of God. And in a sealed scroll, it wasn't just anybody that could open it. As Americans, we think we can just open anything that we want. But in the ancient world, they had a lot more restrictions about that. And so when John sees the scroll and it's sealed shut, and the question is, who's worthy to open it? And the answer is nobody in heaven, nobody on earth, nobody under the earth. Nobody can open the scroll. He begins to weep. Why? Because the scroll represents the will of God. And without the will of God being opened and released, we're just stuck in the same repetitive cycle of other people's wills and our own wills being in control of all things. The problem in our world today, I know lots of people like to blame God for lots of things. Have you ever noticed when something goes right, we did a good job, and when something goes wrong, what is God doing? I don't get it. It's like that. The idea is that what we see a lot of in the world is not the will of God. It's the will of people who are imposing their will on others. And without the will of God being opened and released, we're just stuck in those repetitive cycles. In fact, things not only won't get better, they're likely to get worse. And so he's weeping because now we're going to be stuck the way we are. But then the Lamb enters. And an elder tells him, you don't have to weep. There's someone who's worthy. And he describes him in this way. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah, which I wish I had time just to unpack that whole title in and of itself. But the way the Lion of the tribe of Judah appears is very stark. It's an uncomfortable image. It's the image of a lamb that had been slaughtered. Now, if you've ever seen an animal that has been slaughtered, it's not an easy image to look at. And this animal who had been slaughtered is alive. So it's not like an artist might take a really cute picture of a lamb and maybe a little drop of blood on its where a collar would be if it was domesticated. That's not what it is. This is a lamb whose life has been taken and yet it stands. What is John telling us? What is Jesus telling us? What are we learning from this? And that is power is being redefined. That sacrifice, not force, is what unseals the future for us. Sacrifice, not force, is how God's will is released in our world. And this is very frustrating because a lot of people believe that they just need more power and more force and they can impose. That's exactly how we got where we are. And what we have is the Lion of the tribe of Judah who became the Lamb that was slain from the foundations of the world. Which leads us to this point, and that is that the cross doesn't just erase curses, it rewrites futures. It doesn't erase curses, it rewrites futures. What do I mean by this? Well, if you are anything of a student of the Old Testament, you know that there's a number of prophets. Some of them are called major prophets. Some of them are called minor prophets. You might want to know what the difference is that, and it's not how many people listen to them, it's how many words they wrote. So I would be considered a minor pastor. I don't speak as long as some people. Fewer words, right? But there was an Old Testament prophet, his name was Zechariah, and he's also brought up to, and John's not plagiarizing him, he's in the same place seeing the same thing that Zechariah saw. In chapter 5, he's in the throne room of heaven, and he sees a scroll, and he describes it, interestingly enough, much like John did. There's writing on both sides of it, which would have been unusual, but he gives us a little bit more information. He says this scroll is curses that will go out to expel two kinds of realities. One is thieves, and the other is liars. So curses that will expel thieves and liars, and this will go into any and every house. It's a really intriguing picture. So first of all, the idea of curses. When we think about curses, we think about someone stringing together a group of 4-letter words with a kind of creativity that meant they put a lot of thought into it. You know, I mean, I've heard some people when they go off, you just wonder, how did they manage that? There's actually not that many 4-letter words, and yet they found just the right way to piece them together. It's like a scroll. And you just, wow, that's really creative. And as though, and usually when people do that, they're angry, they're upset. And so some people see God as like this. He's just had it up to here with the sin in the world, and he's finally throwing a holy tantrum, and now he is going to make sure everyone pays the price. He's had it, and that's not what this picture is. We also tend to think of curses as maybe a witch over some kind of cauldron, and she or he is stirring up some kind of intended ill, focused and targeted on someone so that their life becomes miserable. The prince becomes the frog. And we think like that. So maybe God is not blowing up, maybe he's just stirring up a targeted response to people he wants to see suffer. And that's not the word in the Old Testament. That's not what it means. This is what we have created in our world. But how God sees that and what the word originally means is this. The word curse is actually closer to the word consequence. In the ancient world, they would enter into a covenant. For us, it would be like a contract. And in the covenant, they would spell out not only what the agreement was, but what the benefits of that agreement would be. And if you break the agreement, what the consequences of breaking that agreement would be. That was all part of it. You know, it wasn't just like if you break the promise, then I'll see you in court. It wasn't that. These following things will happen. And so what's happening is that in this picture of a scroll being opened in which consequences are being released on 2 groups, thieves and liars. Well, it is interesting to me that Jesus, when describing our adversaries, Satan, the devil, he describes them those 2 primary ways. He says that the thief, talking about Satan, has come to steal, to kill, and to destroy, but I have come that you might have life to the full, right? And then he also describes Satan as being the father of all lies. That he fathers the lies that are in our world. Now, this is a really intriguing concept to me. What it is saying is that the consequences are that when the seal is open, seals are broken, and the scroll is open, that something will go out in order to expel thieves and liars from any area that they are. It's kind of a picture like this. God is releasing consequences in a way that break down any system that thrives on or depends on lying and stealing. Now I know a lot of us will go, good. So let me ask you, have you ever lied? Well, I mean, when you think about what I said, I mean, technically, I guess it could be a lie, but if you understood, I mean, it was almost a holy lie. It was intended for good. Even God in heaven was going, that was really creative. I don't think he crossed a line. I think he's right up to it there, but that if I were him, I would have done the same thing. No. And why do we lie? Well, we lie primarily 2 reasons, really, when you think about it. And one, we tend to lie because we're defending ourselves in some way. We don't want a consequence to come to us. And sometimes we lie to deceive. We want to take advantage of a situation. And we've all been in some situation where we said things that weren't true or failed to say things that were true because we wanted someone to operate in an opinion that wasn't real or true, or because we were trying to avoid something that we certainly deserved. It wasn't going to be easy. We didn't want it, but we wanted to get away from it. And so there's this concept. And then stealing, I mean, so, well, I'm good on that one, Pastor. I don't steal. Okay. I don't know that it's a 1 for 2 situation. And when you think about stealing, we always think about taking someone's property, like going out and taking something that belongs to them, picking their pocket and taking their wallet. So that is stealing, that counts, but there's other ways that we steal too. Here's an example. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone, and because you were preoccupied by something else, you weren't really paying attention to them? Has it ever happened to you? Yeah. What you're doing is you're stealing from that person in that moment what was the attention that they should have had because you were preoccupied with something else. There's all kinds of ways that we can steal. And so there's this, the word is curse, is a consequence that goes out. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Because of what the Apostle Paul helps us understand. This is really cool. Christ has rescued us from the curse pronounced by the law, the consequence from the law. When he was hung on the cross, he took upon himself the curse, the consequence for our wrongdoing. For it is written in the scriptures, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. Aren't you glad that Jesus, when he became the slain lamb, slaughtered from the foundations of the world, when he sacrificed himself, he took on himself the consequences for all the stealing and all the lying, and he brings a new order to our lives and to our world. Is there anybody here who thinks you're grateful for what Jesus took on himself, right? Took on himself. Yeah. Then it says this is really interesting. Your prayers are not wasted. And there's a picture that's given us here too. I love the imagery. It's a picture of golden bowls and incense that's coming up. Now, how many here have ever smelled incense? How many here like the smell of incense? Less hands, but still. Where did this idea of incense come from? Well, back in the ancient world, they didn't have access to the kind of soap that we have, or to the colognes, or to all the stuff that we use to hide how we really smell. So in the ancient world, if you went into a public gathering, like a worship, it would be a little bit difficult to bear. So they would burn incense, really for two things. One is the place would smell better, and then it would be an image of something rising to heaven. It's kind of like that. And John locks in on this concept, and this is what he says. All of our prayers have never been wasted. You've never uttered a wasted prayer, not one. They've all been preserved. They're in these gold bowls. And they're rising as incense, which means to God two things. One is your prayer is not a bad odor to him. It's something that's sweet smelling to him, and that there's no such thing as an unanswered prayer. That a delay is not a denial. That there comes a point in time when every prayer we've ever prayed is answered. That's a phenomenal thing. And it makes me want to pray all the more. Jesus comes not as the thief who came to steal, kill, and destroy. He comes as the Lamb who will restore and redeem and rebuild. And so our prayers are not wasted. I'll ask the worship team to come out. My last point is this. That the will of God is activated when the will of God is invited. The will of God is activated when the will of God is invited. That's why Jesus teaches us to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's not just a religious phrase. It's not a spiritual cliche so that people know you're part of the group. We're actually inviting Jesus to be the executor of God's will, to break the seals in our lives, and to overthrow the lies that have kept us stuck where we are, and to restore what has been lost. It's quite a remarkable thing. Revelation isn't a horror story about the end. It's a hope story about God's intention finally unfolding his will in the earth. And it's a great picture for this reason, because when they recognize that there's someone, Jesus, who's worthy to open God's will for the world, everybody just falls down in worship. God hasn't come to overrule your will, but he has a will and he makes it available to you, and there's someone who can open that will for you, and his name is Jesus. And it comes when we invite it. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when that happened, everybody just went down on their faces and they started to praise. Why? Not because everything was already resolved, but everything was already in motion. We sing, "You are worthy of it all," because Jesus is the one who breaks the seals and releases the will of God into our world, and everything that's built on deception and everything that's built on theft is now going to be restored to his intended purpose. Aren't you glad? God has a will, and it's better than anything we've seen so far. Yeah? Let's all stand together.